Welcome back. Again, this is Ronnie Phillips. I am the undergrad TA for this GIS 3500 class. And today we're going to get started working on Lab 1. We're actually going to start interacting with maps and learning how ArcGIS works and how, to navigate through the ArcMap interface. We're going to open things, play around with them, move them around a little, and we're going to find out what sort of data that we can find within a map. So I've got Lab 1 open here. We're just going to go through these learning objectives through the instruction here. If you haven't downloaded this, go ahead and download it. I'm just going to go ahead and download it here for you and show in folder. If you remember from the last tutorial I did, we're just going to right click on this. We're going to cut it. Go into Documents, we'll go into ArcGIS, we found our GIS 3500, here's our folder for Lab 1. I'm going to make a folder. I'll right click here, go to New and Folder. I'm going to call this Data, just so I have a place to, a separate folder just to hold my data, okay? So we're going to double click that and we'll paste that here. We'll right click on this and we'll hit Extract All. This pops up. It popped up on my other screen. Make sure this is unchecked because it's just going to open a different folder that you don't need. Just use the default here, hit extract. It'll extract and do its thing, and then we've got our file folder right here. So we're ready to go. We'll go ahead and minimize that. You'll want to go ahead and open ArcMap up. I already have it up on my end, so I'm just going to minimize this, and here's ArcMap. This may look a little bit different on your end. You'll probably have an opening screen that comes up that asks you if you want to create a blank template. I've already closed it on my end. If you have closed it, you can click on this right here just for a new map if you wanted to create a new map. But you'll want to close that, close whatever window comes up, and we're going to open lab1.mxd. So we're going to click on Open. And we are going to navigate to that folder. We said it was in GIS 3500. Lab 1, here's our data, here's our folder. We're going to keep going through until we find Lab 01 data. It's going to be this one. For this one, I believe is for remote users. I'm going to be using this one here, I believe, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to use this one. So we'll double click it. And it's going to open. There we go. Okay, so we've got a map that shows populated places, states and provinces, graticules, which are these things here, and a bounding box, which is, just basically this thing right here. Well, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. So what we're going to do, like I said, this is, just a world map with grid lines, state and county boundaries, red circles of cities. As we scroll through, it says, you can find a list of the layer names. These are layers, okay? It's kind of important to figure out or conceptualize how these work. As these are placed on top of one another, that's how they appear. If I were to take populated places and move it under here, see those red dots, they disappeared because the states and provinces layer here is on top of populated places here. Let's go ahead and move that back. Okay, so for number 2, it says in the table of contents, check the next box to turn the layer off. Pretty easy. We'll just check this. Turns everything off. Number 3 says turn it back on. So we'll turn that back on. And then it says in the table of contents, drag the populated places to the bottom of the layers below bounding box. So we'll take this and just click and hold and drag it under here, and we see that all of those red dots disappeared. And the reason for that, it asks in the instruction, it says why. Well, remember what I had said earlier, you've got layers that, overlap on top of each other. this populated places, it's underneath that. And if we were to turn all of these off, hey, there's those cities again, right? So it's layers on top of layers um, that determine, how a thing is displayed. Back in, when we used paper maps and plastic overlays, we would that's how we would arrange them, is to draw a thing on a piece of plastic, that fell over the top of a map, and we'd flip it up, and you'd have multiple overlays like that. Well, it's the same thing here. You've got these different layers that kind of replace that sort of thing. Okay, so next we're going to use the identify tool, which you can find right here. It's this blue circle with an I in it, right? That's the identify tool. Is it gonna? Yeah, sometimes when you, yeah, if you mouse over it, it says identify, right? So it says we're going to use the identify tool to examine information that is associated with the shape you clicked on. On the tools toolbar, pause the mouse pointer. Yeah, it even says it right here. Identify tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the identify tool. Let's move this back up here. It didn't say to do that, but we're going to put that here. And we're going to click on Los Angeles, right? And I'll move this over here. And what shows up is a window that identifies the information that's available for Los Angeles. These are called attributes, and these are stored in a table that's part of this data set. We'll get to that in a second. But this is a quick way for us to look through, scroll through and see the various attributes for Los Angeles. And the instruction says scroll down the table, and you can find some information such as population from 1955, right here, to 2050, right there. Yeah, so it does say, note this is, per 1,000 people, so there's a multiplier in there. You would actually multiply 50, 51, 54 by 1,000. That's your multiplier. That would be the actual population. Quiz question 1, what is the population of Mexico City? I'm not going to do that for you. What you'll want to do is follow some of the stuff that you use the identify tool to find the population of Mexico City. So now that you have seen various types of data displayed on the map, you'll next investigate the connection between source layers and source data and map layers. In the table of contents, we're going to click on states and provinces and click properties. We'll right click on that, hit properties. And the layer properties are going to come up. You want to click the source tab, and you want to examine the data source information. And a lot of this stuff, it seems pretty complicated, but it's also pretty important to have. The thing we're looking at here is we want to figure out the geometry type here. And so our geometry type is a polygon, right? So states and provinces represents all these, states and, provinces that make up all the countries. And it's a polygon file, or type, polygon type. Okay, so it says, what is the name of the feature class? The name of the feature class is states and provinces, and we know that because it says it right here, feature class. Feature class name, states and provinces. So you can rename this layer if you want to. Number 7, it says you can rename your layer. We're going to change this to read. In the layer name here, we're going to change it to read state. And province, if I can spell, province, boundary. We hit enter. You see that it changed that right there. And we can right click and go back to the properties on that. We'll see that it's changed here. But you'll notice this hasn't changed the feature class name. This is a little bit complicated to understand. what you need to. They call it an alias, okay? And so this is the layer name's alias, right? This is what we see it as, but your computer still recognizes it as states underscore provinces. So we see this as state and province. That's what we want everyone else to see. But like I said, your computer still reads it as states underscore provinces. This is important later on. You'll need to remember that. Okay, so exercise 2 has us navigating the map. And it says on the tools toolbar, click on the zoom in tool. That's right here. That's this little lollipop zoom tool right here. Move the mouse pointer over the map. We can see that it's a magnifying glass. I call it a lollipop. We can click and drag to draw a box around Mexico City. If you happen to mess up and you, for some reason, draw a box around Cape Town, you can just hit this button right here. This is back to previous extent. And it'll bring you back to that whole thing right there. Let's say that we did this, and then we did this, and I don't know what I'm doing here. Every time you click on go back to previous extent, it'll bring you back to that zoom level. So let's go ahead and click and drag around this right here. Another way to do that is you could hit full extent right here, and that'll bring you to the full extent of your map. I'm going to go back to here, and we're zoomed in on Mexico City. If I could zoom in on the right deal there. Okay, I'm going to shift it a little bit. I'm going to use this pan tool. It says number 4 on the toolbars. You click the pan tool. When you move your mouse pointer over the display area, we've got a hand tool. And if you click it and then pull it down, that's panning. And so the instruction says, drag the display to the north until you see Texas. Hey, there's Texas, right? Use the identify tool and click on Texas from the map. Pretty easy stuff. Here's the identify tool, click on Texas. And then there's a quiz question that asks you for the ADM code, admin code, ADM code for Texas. It's pretty easy to answer there. It says to avoid accidental zooming, it is best to use the select elements tool on the toolbar. You can do that as well. On the tool, number 5 says on the tools toolbar, click the measure tool. So let's click on the measure tool, it's right here. This opens the measure window, click the choose units arrow, that's this one here. And we're going to click on distance in kilometers. And we'll keep this window open over here. And it says move the mouse pointer over the display, it becomes a small ruler with a crosshair. Place the pointer at the center of the point that represents Los Angeles and begin to draw a line. Can we see that? No, we cannot. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use what we've already learned. Hey, there's Los Angeles, right? And so I'm just going to click on this measure tool again. It should still be in kilometers, right? Right. And then it says click at the center of the point that represents Los Angeles. Click to begin a line. We click it, and then we move to Mexico City, and we can see that line being drawn out, right? So we'll move to Mexico City, and we'll double click to finish that line. We can see here that the line segment represents this many kilometers. The instruction says, yeah, it's over 2,400 kilometers from Mexico City to Los Angeles. Pretty easy stuff. It's just showing you how to determine distance. Okay, so for exercise 3, it says looking at feature attributes. In the table of contents, we're going to right-click populated places and then open the attribute table. You can close that measure tool. We're not going to use that again. So we'll right click on populated places, and we're going to open attribute table. If you remember earlier, I said that, you know, when you clicked on a shape, the resulting information were the attributes. Well, that's where all this stuff is stored. It's stored in the attribute table. Okay. This is basically, I mean, if you think of it, if any of you, I'm sure most of you have used Excel. This looks like an Excel spreadsheet. It's pretty much the same thing. It's a database, and that's all Excel really is. It's a database. That's what this is tapping into, is a database. And in that database is stored all this stuff, right? All of these attributes. And this shows us all the attributes for populated places. You can resize this however you want. Some of your tables may end up looking like this, something like that. You can use this, and it can be, you know, handy if you have a double screen monitor or something like that. But I don't like doing it like that. The way I will do mine, and I'm saying this for in the future, you'll be able to see where my stuff is. What I do is I click on this blue bar right here, and I drag it down into that little blue arrow looking thing right there. And that stretches it all the way across the screen, so it doesn't obscure my map very much, you know, a little bit right here, but that's, you know, negligible. And so I've got a table, and I can see all this stuff, you know, without having to, if I had it back the way it was, you know, I'd have to sit there and drag all this stuff out, and you'd still have to, you know, zoom across. Instead, I choose to drag this down into there, let go, and it just shows up at the bottom. I still see lots of my map, and I can also see a lot of my attributes. And you can resize this by clicking on it and moving it up and down however you want. I usually like to show just a little bit. You know, maybe 10 or so. My screen size isn't, you know, optimized right now, so you can't see what's over here. There is something over here, and I'm sure you see it on your end. Anyway, so we're going to continue on with the attribute table. It says we can resize it to your preference. We're going to scroll down through the table and examine the records. It says that there are 27 records. And so we'll just, yeah, there's 27 records. It even says that right here, 27 records. If you were to click on this right here, we'd see that this is the first record. This is a record as it goes across this way. And if you move to that one, click that button right there, it'll move to the second record, third record. If I wanted to move to the 27th record, that's how it would work. If I wanted to go all the way back to the beginning, just click on that, bring it right back to the front. Okay, so it says, you know, there's 27 records. Scroll across the table to look at the attributes or the fields, and these are fields right here. This right here is a field. This right here is a field. The columns are fields. Rows are records. So all of this on this row right here applies to Los Angeles, right? Okay, so we can scroll across and we can look at the you know, the various fields, and it's going to ask you quiz question 3: how many records are in state-province boundaries, or states and provinces? That's this right here. Open the attribute table, find out. It's pretty easy. Okay, so it asks, for number 3, it says records as well as fields can be highlighted. You've seen me do that over here. Whenever it's highlighted, that means it's selected. You can see that that is selected right here. If I were to clear that out, this would be cleared, but also that cyan highlight right here went away too. See how that works? I clicked on it, this highlighted, and this highlighted. So it says move the attribute table so it doesn't cover the map display. Like I said, that's why I keep it down here, is to keep it off of the map display. It says Los Angeles is highlighted for number 4. Next, you will clear the current selection. At the top left of the attribute table, hit the clear selection button. You can click that here, and it'll clear that. You can see that there's no more cyan highlight here or in Los Angeles. The same goes, you have the same feature right here. So next it says number 6 in the attribute table, scroll to the right of the table until you find population 2015. So we scroll over here, we see population 2015 is right here. It says right click and hit sort descending. So we'll right click on that and we'll wait. And then we'll hit sort descending. And that orders the records from the largest to the smallest. And we can see that it rearranged. We've got our population now here. It's 36, 20, 19. Remember, these were all multiplied by 1,000, so that's, you have to take that into consideration. But these are all now ordered from largest to smallest. And so on number 7, it says you will select multiple records. It says press shift. Press shift. I'm going to press and hold shift. And I'm going to click the tabs in the first and the 14th records. Okay, so it's going to be, I'm going to scroll back this way. I'm going to, actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of move my table over a little bit. I know I'm breaking my rule, but we've got our first one right here, and we want to go down to the 14th one. How do we figure that out, huh? Now what you can do is you can hit, we'll click this, shift 14, oh, no, 14, hit enter. I've got shift pressed. I'm going to click this right here, and it selected all of those records, the first 14 records, okay? So to go back over that, what you really want to do, we're going to hit this, and we don't know which one's the 14th record, so we're going to type in 14 down here. 14, we're going to hit enter. It navigates to this 14th one right here. But if you notice, this is still highlighted, right? So we're going to scroll back down to that 14th record. I'm going to press and hold shift. We're going to click this, and those 14 records are highlighted. It even says right here, 14 out of 27 are selected. So these are all selected. So it says move the table out of the way to see the map. The 14 cities with populations of greater than 10,000 are selected on the map. So let's go to full extent. And hey, we see that these 14 cities are selected, right? And we can even move this out of the way a little bit. Let's bring it back down into that. I'm going to zoom out on my map. If you have a mouse wheel, it's really what I recommend for this class, instead of using like a touchpad or a mouse without a mouse wheel. But if you click on that mouse wheel, it automatically turns into a pan tool. So good thing to know. Anyway, and if you have a scroll tool, it allows you to zoom in and out. So it says we've got 14 cities selected. We see those 14 cities selected. So we're going to go to number 9. With the 14 records still selected in the table, right-click the 2015 or population 2015. And click statistics. This is important to remember. You need to remember this. This is really important. What this does is it figures the statistics for the selection, for those selected cities. It figures those statistics. Here's your count, it's 14. The minimum population for it is this number here. The maximum population is this right here. The sum of all of those 14 populations is this number right here. You know what mean is? It's the average. Here's the average population, standard deviation. Pretty easy stuff. But it's really important to remember because it keeps you from having to add those by hand. So if I wanted to, know the sum of those 14 cities, all I'd have to do is, we go back into here, we'll right click on that population field, we'll go to statistics. There's our sum right there. You don't have to add those by hand. You can do it, you can have the computer do the hard work for you. Okay, so we're going to scroll down, and it asks you, what is the total number, sum, of people living in the 14 largest cities in 2015? I'm not going to answer that question for you because it's really easy. So I'm going to clear the selection. I'm used to doing it here, so if I do it here and you want to do it here, there's no right or wrong way to clear it. I'll go ahead and click that right there. And it's asking you to do this on your own. How many cities are there with populations greater than 10,000 in the year 2050? So here's your 2050 field right here. I'm not going to answer that for you. It's really easy. Just figure it out, write it down. You could even use statistics to count those cities for you, but it's pretty easy to figure out. You just look at it, figure out which ones are less than or greater than 10,000 in the year 2050, write it down. And that'll bring you to the end of this tutorial. It's pretty easy stuff. You need to practice it on your own. Try to break it if you if you want. There's nothing better that teaches you about a program than experimenting and playing around with whatever you can. So, but anyway, that's going to bring it. Like I said, it's going to bring us to the end of this tutorial. You don't really need to save this, so you can just close it if you want and continue on to the quiz.